We have a special guest today. You can see his very handsome face. This is Brian Strauss, Grant's older brother by 12 years. He's my stepson. My wife was married before she married me, and this is her progeny, this beautiful guy. He is 12 years older than Iggy, and he named Grant Iggy, and this is what happened. When Grant was born and he was an infant, he made a sound that sounded like Iggy. You know, they make these sounds. So Brian started calling him Iggy. And I said to my wife, Dawn, I said, you know, they're 12 years apart in age and they're half brothers. What if we call Grant Iggy? And that way Brian will feel he named him and it'll bring them closer. Well, they are very close. But the minute we did that, Brian started calling Grant Boy. He never called him Iggy. So he doesn't call him Iggy, but Dawn and I do. Hi, Brian. It's so nice to have you on our show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's fun to be on here, although I guess my Twitter cover is fully blown at this point. But yeah, no, it's great to be here. Thank you. I've been admiring you guys from, up close and from a distance. And I think what you guys are doing on here is great with Grant. It's been so fun to watch your whole journey and to get where you are today. I'm just thrilled. I'm a huge fan of the show. Thanks for having me on.
When he says his cover is blown, he's Brian in Oakland on Twitter, and he's been the guy who's had my back for years, since before anyone else did. So that's what he meant.
Yeah, he has your back.
He really does. Yeah,
that's right.
Why don't you take over? What is your the first topic that you would like to talk about?
Well, I think what would be, I don't think anyone on here cares anything about my opinions on sports, first of all. You guys are the pros. I think one of the things that they might care about, though, in terms of like the dynamic of growing up in the same house, out of the three of us, I'm the only one who's still a sports fan. You guys like sports, but a fan of specific teams. So, right. Growing up in Oakland, I grew up going to just, innumerable A's games, and we had Warriors season tickets. I went to a ton of Warriors games. The Raiders left when I was really, really little. And the first time, that is. And so I wasn't really a Raiders fan. I was a 49ers fan. But I still am a fan of particularly the A's and the Warriors. But I think growing up in that house and in the house with you guys as professional sports journalists, one of the things I think that your fans might know is that besides all of the stuff that you guys talk about publicly, there is a ton of stuff you can't talk about. There's all of the personal things that go on, all the political stuff that goes on. It's, Lowell, you wrote this book, Gloves Off, but there's another, book that you can't write out there
right.
that would blow people's minds about all this stuff.
Gloves really off. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that does inform my fandom a little bit. And it has made me a little bit, I would say, on the one hand, a little more cynical than the average fan. But at the same time, I think I got from you, Lowell, as a parent, was the importance of standing for something, right? And so, to start off the discussion, I think what I was going to talk about is last night I was driving home from riding my bike, and I cruised by Monaghan's over there on Mountain Boulevard and Joaquin Miller, and that's a Raider spot. And there were people out the door, watching the Raiders home opener with Raiders stuff on. And as an Oaklander and as a fan, I can't imagine that anymore, man. It's how many times has somebody got to leave you before, you're in a relationship? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially
because the Raiders were an original Oakland franchise. It's disgusting.
Yeah. They put Oakland on the map, along with the A's. And then, and so in general, I think when you look at the Raiders leaving Oakland twice, for me, fandom is very much everyone talks about on Twitter and fans talk about team first. I don't feel that way. For me, it's place first. When you put on an A's hat, it's as much about Oakland as it is, or a Raiders hat, it was as much about Oakland as it was about the team. And in fact, I do have, there in real life, there are real issues that affect that when a team comes or leaves, or the money that you spend that affects the city that I care about, right? And so when you look at someone like the Raiders leaving you twice, I hate them. I can't stand them. They screwed us over twice. I can't.
And Brian, say how your feelings about the Warriors moving from Oakland to San Francisco, because the way they marketed it was it's the Bay Area's team. It's only 2 stops away on BART. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, they've always been hedging their bets with the whole Golden State thing, right? So that was always hanging over that. And Lowell, you talked about that my whole life. You saw this coming, that they were hedging. But at the same time, here's the way I feel about like the A's, the Raiders, and now the Warriors, right? And even San Francisco as they move to Santa Clara. The culture of the Warriors, the culture of the Raiders was not just Oakland; it was East Oakland, right? That's a vibrant, rich, dedicated, passionate culture that I think that the Warriors used to build an identity around.
They did.
Oracle, all that stuff. Was like. Many thought of it as like the premier place, the premier fandom in the NBA was going on at Oracle. And I think that they just look at their success and they think, well, you know what? I can just pick up and go somewhere else. And, it bums me out because they might be right. They're certainly going to make a ton of money at the Chase Center. And I'm sure the Raiders may be better off, I don't know, over at in Vegas. But, man, it really bums me out as a fan, the way the culture of my town, of our love. I mean, Grant and Lowell, you guys have done this. You guys, how fun it was to like get off on the BART train and as a little kid getting into kind of the real world and like going across that bridge from the BART station to the Coliseum innumerable times. It's like a microcosm of the underground economies of East Oakland, and it was just wonderful to see all that stuff. And that's just one example of all of the stuff that now these teams are now picking up, hoping they can go somewhere else and just kind of capitalize on.
Yeah, like they have a new place in Santa Clara, but they don't have that East Oakland BART tunnel experience over there that they had here.
No, it's all sanitized. Yeah. It's all super corporate. They pay the players well. That's great, but it just feels really detached. And like, so I grew up a passionate Niners fan. And love Joe Montana and Steve Young, but the truth is, when they picked up and went to that, left Candlestick and left the city, which they did, and moved far away and went to that sanitized, Silicon Valley environment, I lost interest. I mean, not so much in football, but I lost passion for the team. That's for sure. And go ahead,
Bri. Do you have passion for any teams now?
I do. In fact, so I'm still, I would say, the most passionate about the Warriors, but I'm concerned, right? I mean, it's still mostly the same team. Although part of me took a little pleasure in that their first year, our first season after they moved, they were a stinker. I was kind of like, yeah, it serves you right, for leaving. But I do still root for the Warriors, and I definitely root for the A's. But I gotta say, so that informs my position. It's like, they're now talking about the A's have been threatening to leave for years. It looks like they might not leave. It looks like they might stay. It looks like they might get a beautiful, gleaming downtown stadium. And honestly, I'll still support them and I'll go to that stadium. But my first choice would be to stay where they are. I would love to see them rebuild and get a gleaming stadium in East Oakland and be a hub for that part of the town. And to be an economic spark plug to keep the A's where they are in their spot and where their roots are. Frankly, they always talk about rooted in Oakland. They're really rooted in East Oakland. And I'd love to see them stay there.
Brian, I don't believe that the A's even have a 50% chance of getting the downtown stadium. Honestly, I think they're going to end up staying, if they staying where they are. I don't think they're going to get that thing by the bay.